Welcome to my new build. This is my Bmw K1100, and compared to my other builds, we're gonna do it a little bit different this time. But first, let's take the bike for a test ride.
Well, I think it's safe to say that the test ride went pretty good. A little bit slow, but we'll work on that in this build series. But first, let's briefly talk about the bike. When we leave out the R80 and R100 builds and take a look at the K-bike builds, you see a K75, multiple K100s and the most recent K1200 build. But there's still one build missing in that lineup. So, this is it, my new money pit, my Bmw K1100 from 1999. The K1100 has been produced up to 1999, which makes this bike one of the last ones rolled out of the factory. It's a 1100cc, which makes around 100 horsepower at the crank. Like shown, all my previous builds look far from original. They were built pretty minimalistic. All the builds had a shortened subframe, no fairings, no windscreen, and certainly no suitcases. But what if we turn it around 180 degrees and make this the ultimate sleeper? What's a sleeper? Let's ask Google.
To put things simply, a sleeper is essentially a car that other drivers might not expect to perform in a certain way. You could even say other drivers might underestimate these vehicles. A sleeper vehicle is fast, powerful, and efficient, but not always flashy.
So the key for this project to make it as plug and play as possible. Certainly there will be some cutting involved somewhere, for instance around there for the intercooler, but the general look of this bike will stay as it is right now. So now more about the turbo. This right here is a Garrett GBC 14-200. GBC stands for Garrett Boost Club line. The first two numbers indicate the turbo frame size. The numbers following the dash indicate the peak potential flywheel horsepower rating. It's engineered for small displacement engines, so perfect for 1100cc. It has a journal bearing rotating group and an internally wastegated turbine housing with 0.5 bar actuator. Just about right for running stock internals. I know, I'm not the first one to put a turbo on a K-bike. In fact, there was a guy called Matt Carpri that sold plug-and-play kits back in the late 80s, early 90s for the K100s under the company called Luftmeister. But we'll talk more about that throughout the whole build series. That's enough about the 80s. Let's go back to January of this year, because when I bought this bike, the engine wasn't that good as seen in the intro, making those clouds. Hi, it's me from the past. So one way to check the health of your engine is by doing a compression test. So I got this compression tester right here, and therefore I took out the spark plugs, which by the way are very dark, so it's running really rich, so not only bad for fuel consumption but also not a good thing for performance. So took out all the spark plugs, took out the fuse number 6, so no fuel, no spark. I got the scorecard right here, so let's check it out how it scores. Okay, let's briefly talk about the numbers, because the numbers ain't good. Here are the numbers. I'll put a piece of paper over the bar numbers so it's a little less confusing, so we're only left with the PSI numbers. Okay, so I did 3 tests. The first test, which you saw in the video, was with the throttle body closed. So those are the numbers right here. And as you can see, cylinder number 3, not so good. Then compression test number 2, the O. So the O stands for open, which means the throttle body were open. So the engine was a little bit more capable of sucking air into the cylinders. So cylinder 1, 2 and 4 came out great, perfect, no problem. But still, cylinder number 3 had 60% loss between the other cylinders. No bueno. Then came test number 3, the W, which stands for wet. So I put a teaspoon of oil, like 2 milliliters in each cylinder, and then test it again. So if the numbers increase significantly from the O numbers, it says that the O-rings on the piston were shot. And as you can tell, so these are all quite matching for 1, 2 and 4, but cylinder number 3 went from 125 to 205. Not good. But before I tear the whole engine apart, I first want to check the valve clearance. It could be that it's also related to the bad compression. So let's take off the fairings, take off the valve cover and check the valve clearance. You might want to hang around for the end of the video where we set the baseline for this project by visiting the dyno, and we'll also set the 0 to 100 kilometers per hour time. What the? What? Check the valve clearance on all the 16 valves and the inlet valve. So it has to be between 0.15 and 0.20, and for the 8 valves on top, yeah, nothing really out of the ordinary. Only this valve from cylinder number 2 is just a little bit tight, but yeah, nothing really major going on right there. And also for the exhaust, it needs to be within 0.20 and 0.30. And in general, the valves on the exhaust are a little bit tight, but nothing out of the ordinary. So the engine archaeology continues. So we drop the fluids, then we'll continue on taking the timing chain off, take off the throttle body, exhaust and the head, and then we'll take out the piston. So let's go. Despite the fact that it was not necessary, I also removed the oil from the final drive and the gearbox. This was because the maintenance history was not known. Because the oil and water pump also had to come off, it will also be rebuilt later on. A T-piece will eventually be fitted to the oil pump because of the oil supply to the turbo. By placing a T-piece, the existing oil pressure sensor can also continue to be used. After dismantling the pump, the timing chain cover could be removed, followed up by the exhaust. To remove the cylinder head, a lot had to be dismantled. First, the seat had to be removed so that there was room to remove the tank. Then the radiator could be removed, and an update will also follow up on this to keep the engine cool, but more about that later. When the air filter box was removed, a very nasty engine block became visible. More work. After the first cleaning, the throttle bodies could be removed, which will also be rebuilt.
Well, I guess, me being me, I couldn't resist cleaning it up a little bit more. When the engine was at top dead center, it was time to remove the timing chain sprockets, followed up by the cam caps and eventually the camshafts. It's the first time I've gotten so deep into a K engine, but so far I'm really enjoying it and everything is pretty self-explanatory. If you follow the manual, nothing can go wrong. So it didn't take long before I had everything dismantled and I was getting close to removing the cylinder head.
Progress is good, progress is great. So, took both camshafts out along with the tappets right there. So I kept everything organized, and now the only thing that we need to do is get the brake bar right here with the Torx 50, and now we only need to undo the head bolts right here and tap it with a rubber mallet, I guess, and then finally the head is off. Here we go. Oh man, there's only just a little bit of work to do. Yes, it's definitely gross, but what do you expect from a bike from 1999? But I also noticed that the valves, well, those are really small, especially when you compare it to a valve from a R100. The cylinder head is soaking in the fuel right now, so hopefully that helps cleaning it up at a later stage. And also already cleaned up around my working bench and around the bike already twice, because it's getting quite late, but I must be liking this project so far. If you also like this build or my content on my channel, please consider subscribing, you're really helping me out. So thanks a lot, and right now it's time to get the pistons out. Some leverage did help. Yeah, there we go. Voila.
The engine is as empty as it will be. Now it's time to start the big clean. First, everything needs to be completely taken apart to determine which parts needed to be ordered and to be able to clean it all properly.
So got all these parts degreased. The initial clean is now done, and now it's time to move on to the next part, which is this beauty right here. So I haven't used it in a while, but it's really handy for cleaning up parts. Yeah. My ultrasonic cleaner. The ultrasonic cleaner is finally up to temperature, but while I had to wait, I was a little bit bored, so I went ahead and sandblasted these parts, so especially the brass parts will look pretty good. As additive for the ultrasonic cleaner, I use this So take per R33, so I got great results of that. So now throw all the parts in the ultrasonic cleaner and give them a real proper clean.
The ultrasonic cleaner makes light work of the cleaning that needs to be done. And with a capacity of 45 liters, almost everything fits in.
Hot and fresh out the kitchen. Now it's time for batch number 2. Right now we broke the engine down, cleaned up all the parts right here. So we also need a lot of parts to rebuild the engine. By far that isn't enough to rebuild the engine for the turbo like I have in mind, but this is the first batch, and a huge step in rebuilding the engine is this gasket seal kit right here for a K1100. So everything you need gasket wise is right here, so that's very handy. Also more like the basic stuff, some oil, filters, starter motor rebuild kit, fuel and water pump rebuild kit. So you've seen that all before, but what you probably didn't see before is this throttle body rebuild kit. So this is new. I'm gonna turn it over like that. So everything to rebuild the throttle body yourself is right here. So that's also available by kpartsholland.com. For changing the piston rings, we also need to take off the cylinder head, obviously. So that's why also this valve grinding kit. So we're also gonna rebuild the cylinder head while we're at it. So we're gonna clean it, throw it also in the ultrasonic cleaner, reseat the valves, and also change the valve stem seals. That's why I also ordered this puppy right here. New day, and I already started working on the cylinder head. So it's been a while since I rebuilt the cylinder head, so I had to get my practice in. So I already went ahead and took out all the exhaust valves, and I got them labeled up over here. And as I found out, I also needed to make a sort of extension tool because of the distance of the cylinder head is too big for my valve compressor. So right now I can get little clamps out from the side. So next up, the inlets.
With a little patience, I managed to remove all the intake valves from the head. When disassembling the valves, make sure you organize them properly. Now on to the next step.
The initial clean is done in the fuel and already got a little bit better, but I got it all masked up, plugged up. Now it's time for the blaster.
As usual, I want everything clean, but also the last thing that I want is glass beads left inside the cylinder head. That's why all the cleaning you see now has been done twice. Better safe than sorry.
The work on the head is done, and now it's time to work on the exhaust valves, because as you can see, I already cleaned up the inlet valves with my setup right here. So I'll show you how I did it.
Here are the splices you need to clean up the valves. The tape serves as a protection against the claw of the drills, and the Scotch-Brite and brake cleaner do the real work. To remove the carbon from the valve, I place the drill in the vice grip to make this my made up lathe. With a small screwdriver I could cut off the carbon. Finally, the finishing touch with the Scotch-Brite, and then perfect.
So right now we sorted out the valves and the cylinder head. Now it's time to work on the piston. So obviously the rings needed replacing, and also the pistons could use a cleanup. So let's get going.
Now that the piston rings were off, it was a good opportunity to clean the top of the pistons. By making a gentle rotating motion, all the carbon came off. Job done.
Yes, we're going in the right direction now. So we cleaned up the pistons, the valves, the cylinder head. So now I took out my magic wand. With some grinding paste, it's time to reseat the valves.
By clamping the magic wand into the drill, it makes the job a lot easier. I started each valve with a coarse grit, followed up by the fine grit to finish it off. This gave me the perfect seal.
So far got all the exhaust ports done and working my way on the inlets right now, and I want to show you the comparison between the valve that's already been done and the one that still needs to be done, and especially on the seat. So as you can see, there's a nice dull line all the way around compared to this one right here. 2 done, more to go.
The gasket kit also includes the valve seals, ideally a truly complete kit. And with a little bit of YouTube magic, all the valves are back in place.
In a previous clip you already saw me cleaning the engine block a little bit, because I really don't like the contrast between the fully rebuilt cylinder head and the corroded engine. So I put a little bit of effort in it to clean it up around top and also around here on the bottom. And once cleaned, I couldn't resist painting the engine as well. So right now it looks the best as it can be. So nice satin finish matching up with the rest of the engine. Also cleaned it up and painted it up right here. Next package. So I received injectors, cups to reset the valves, new stretch head bolts, O-rings for the pistons, and a new timing chain. So right now it's time to put the rings on the pistons and put the pistons back into the engine. The new piston rings are now on, and also clock them 180 degrees apart from each other. Loop them all up. Now it's time to use this clamping tool right here and put them in. Pistons are in, so next up is the cylinder head. So I already went ahead and rebuilt it. So new valve seats and all the reseated valves are in right now, and at the moment I'm doing a test with some fuel on top. So if the valves are seated properly, there shouldn't be any fuel coming out the inlet or out of the exhaust.
Good here and good there. Happy me.
I also rechecked the valve clearance, so those are all in red and they're all within spec right now. So I'll check each combustion chamber, and when they're all good, it's time to put the cylinder head on the bike.
All dry, all okay. Now the cylinder head can be put on the bike with new parts. The assembly is the same as this assembly, so I'll spare you that. But I do want to share this shot. This is exactly how I envisioned it. All fresh, everything.
Present day. So the bike is finished and the bike runs great. I already put around 200 kilometers on the bike, and so far not a problem inside, so everything is perfect. But before we put on the turbo, we need to make sure to set our baseline. In some way we can measure it again by doing the compression test, but a more precise way is to go to the dyno.
I headed over to No Limits, where they have a dyno star. We put the bike on the dyno, and now it's time to check how the bike performs.
The dyno session is done, we're back in the garage and got the results right here. So we started with some small runs to see where the bike was at, that everything was okay, and eventually this is the power run. So you see the line right here, which reaches up to 58 brake horsepower at the rear wheel. Honestly, I'm pretty happy with that result, because when we take out around 10% loss throughout the driveline, we end up around 59-69 horsepower at the crank. So when we compare that to the 100 brake horsepower that BMW states that it had back in the day, I say we're on the money right there. But the AFR, air-fuel ratio, is low. It's way too rich, especially at low RPM, and that's why also the spark plugs that we pulled out at the beginning of the video were dead black. At the power run you see the AFR right here, so ideally it needs to be around 14.7. So as you see right here, 11 something is way too rich. Even though it's get leaner on top, it's still too rich. Only what if we had full control over the ECU and would be able to plug our computer on the engine management system. I think that shows enough for the direction that we're going in for this build. So the base is set right now, next power upgrades, and we'll also check those measurements because we're heading back to the dyno. So subscribe to the channel, thumbs up, and I'll see you on the next one. Ciao!